Welcome, everyone. My name is Christine Commerce. I am the program director for the Alliance to End Human Trafficking. Thank you so much for joining us tonight and learn more about online safety. Our organization, for those of you who may be new and joining us this evening, our organization is focused on ending human trafficking through providing educational resources, giving presentations, raising awareness, and engaging in advocacy both at the state and federal levels. And we also help support survivors of human trafficking in their healing and thriving through direct services, through our survivor member houses, and who provide shelter and counseling and spiritual support and job placement. And we help provide educational scholarships as well. So the purpose of this webinar is to educate participants so that they will leave with some actionable strategies to foster a safe, respectful, and secure online environment for children of all ages. And as we know, in today's digital age, our children are more connected than ever. And unfortunately, that brings some risks as well as opportunities. So I'd like to introduce you to our first panelist, who is Kevin Metcalf. Kevin worked in military, state, local, and federal law enforcement before becoming a prosecuting attorney. He founded the National Child Protection Force and was a founding member of Raven. Kevin has built a global reputation for pioneering innovative methods that combine legal strategy, open source intelligence, geospatial mapping, dark web investigations, cryptocurrency tracing, and image analysis to assist law enforcement agencies around the world. I believe he just got back from Dubai. Is that correct? Yep.
Yes.
So Kevin also, through his leadership, has played a critical role in the recovery of countless missing and exploited children and the identification and apprehension of sexual predators across multiple countries. His unique ability to synthesize legal expertise with cutting-edge investigative technologies has positioned him as an international leader in counter-human trafficking and child exploitation investigations, and his mission-driven work continues to advance global collaboration, helping law enforcement and multidisciplinary teams to disrupt trafficking networks and bring victims home. Welcome, Kevin. Our next guest is Olivia Littleton, who serves as the anti-trafficking team supervisor at One More Child, where she directly serves survivors of exploitation and trafficking. She oversees the largest anti-trafficking mobile team consisting of advocates, lived experience experts, and clinicians. She trains communities and professionals on trauma-informed care, human trafficking, and working with survivors. She serves on many boards and advisory councils, including serving as chair of the Central Florida Victim Services Network and co-chair of the Central Florida Human Trafficking Task Force. Olivia has experience advocating at the Florida State Capitol and Washington, D.C. for legislation that protects children and empowers survivors. In October 2024, Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody designated Olivia as the 2024 Survivor Advocate of the Year, recognizing her dedicated fight for survivors. She uses her personal experience as a survivor and her professional expertise to empower others, advocate for survivors, and work towards a world free from human trafficking. And then last but not least, we have Matt Richardson, who's the Director of Intelligence and Investigations with the Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative. He's an international speaker and subject matter expert on open source intelligence and dark web intelligence, with extensive experience in leading and coordinating complex investigations on sex trafficking and CSE offenders in conjunction with law enforcement and government agencies across the world. Matt has co-authored a study titled Expert Analysis of Open Source Material Relating to Child Sexual Abuse Material and Sex Trafficking Occurring on OnlyFans.com with the University of New Haven Center for Forensic Investigations of Trafficking in Persons. He's often sought out as a subject matter expert by the media with TV, film, radio, with international media coverage in Canada. He's also a writing contributor and on-camera character for Dark Highway, a human trafficking documentary that is being televised in Canada and the US and has been featured on CBC's award-winning investigative show, The Fifth Estate, and NBC News. He serves as the head of intelligence with the Canadian OSINT Center and was featured speaker of the first Canadian National Summit on the Prevention of Child Sexual Exploitation. Matt is passionate in his role with ATII, where as part of the team of experts, he uses his skills on a daily basis to make children, family, and communities safer places. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you to all of our esteemed speakers. And we're going to kick this off by having Kevin Metcalf go first and share some information and his experiences with child online exploitation and his work in this field.
Thank you. Now, obviously, I'm going to have to shorten my intro because I think when we all get into these things, and you got some great people here, that takes up a lot of space. So my background is in military, state, local, federal law enforcement, and as a prosecutor. So I wasn't always focused on human trafficking and all of the rest of the crimes like that. Child exploitation took up a very large chunk of my life once I ran across it. So I shifted from terrorism and drugs and all the stuff that is normal and all the stuff that gets all the money and all the resources backing it. And then I shift over here. And it's taken us, I think, a very long time to really get a hold of this because as in terrorism and drugs, all the cops and all the attorneys, of course, I got to say as an attorney that we think we're an expert in everything all the time. So, that's a problem. I do want to say that there are only two experts in human trafficking. There are only two experts in most of the exploitation that we see, especially trafficking, and that is the trafficker or the abuser themselves and the victim or survivor. Those are the only two experts. Matt and I are not experts in any of this stuff. We're really, really good at investigations. We're really good at prosecution, and we're really good at what we do. But again, the only two experts are the victim slash survivor or the trafficker predator. Those are the only ones that really know how this, unfortunately, we call it a game, how this game plays out. Uh, my view is, and I'm very fortunate. All the stuff that you read off about me, I have done very little of that. I depend on a team of people. I depend on others who have a deep skill set in certain things to really make a difference in this. And when you really start looking at the online exploitation, what technology has done has expanded the reach. They can now reach into the bedroom where your child is if they have a device. They can reach into the back seat of your car as you drive your child to school. They can reach your child anywhere. And I was talking to, well, I'm not going to mention her name. She's a survivor and has a great organization out here. She recently sent her children to public school. And I'm talking about within the last few months. So her kids are now going from homeschool to public school. And she called me and said, "Hey, is this normal?" I said, "My kids are going to this class and they require this app and they require the kids to be online and to submit homework online." And so when she was just looking at this and kind of horrified, but based on her experience in life, she was trafficked, she was abused, she's an expert. And I said, "Yeah, unfortunately, that's normal. That's the world we live in." And she had been checking this app out, and I mean, sure enough, you can communicate with anybody. You can get through the safety settings, anything like that. So just kind of setting the playing field here that a lot of parents will look at posts or information like the Dirty Dozen. Here's the Dirty Dozen list of apps and platforms you should avoid. So they go down and make sure their kids don't have any of that, and they feel like they're safe. They've done what they're supposed to do. And that is the dirty dozen. Yeah, stuff you should keep an eye on. But I have seen kids that have been groomed through library systems. One girl in particular I'm thinking about was adopted. She's special needs, did not have a device of her own at home, and did not have social media accounts. But she was groomed through the school library system, and that really shocks people that this can go on even in a place where you think your child is safe. So, and I don't want to I don't want to cause everybody to, this is not fear mongering. This is just an awareness of if your child has an online contact or an online presence in any way, gaming, school, library, do they go to sleepovers? There's access points in a lot of these situations, but I don't know how long you want me to talk or ramble on, but I just wanted to make sure that we hit the key things. The only expert actually on this panel is Olivia, in my opinion. I want to make sure that we do point that out. Because people look at me and you read off my super impressive bio there, but it really doesn't make me an expert in this stuff. Not like Olivia, not like somebody who's lived this and experienced it. What I can say is I think I'm pretty good at hunting people in digital exhaust and finding them wherever in the world they are and wherever they may try to hide. And I know Matt is an extremely skilled individual, much more than I am in a lot of technologies and a lot of other things. But it's when all of us come together and all of us collaborate and really share and support each other. That's really where the power is. And I'll stop with that.
Thank you, Kevin. And then we'll go ahead and hand it over to Olivia.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'm really honored to be here with all of you experts and everyone tuning in, but I'm most grateful that the survivor expertise is being called out because I think that's so true. However, exactly what Kevin said at the end there, if it was just survivors trying to fight this evil alone, it's not enough, right? It's needing each of us with our own expertise, with our own backgrounds, our own callings and passions and education, using what we're good at and pulling it into um, really trying to remove this victimization from continuing to happen. And I am here today really because I want to share my story with you. I want to share some of the really hard pieces of my trauma as a teenager and a young adult. And not because I like to talk about it, but because it's really too important of a topic to not share. I really strongly believe that I went through the victimization that I experienced because it's important for people to look at me and see that I look like a normal person, not someone that you would ever think would be a survivor of an awful crime like this, and explain that it really happens to anybody. Anybody is vulnerable to being exploited because we all have this baseline vulnerability as humans of wanting to feel belonging and love and acceptance. And parents on here, your kids have that just kind of naturally hardwired into them. And so it's important to know that off the bat is that they already have a vulnerability that traffickers are going to want to exploit. And I'll share a little bit of my background, and then I'll point out some of my vulnerabilities now that I see looking back on my story. That I wish, if I had known my vulnerabilities at the time, maybe that would have been a protective factor for me. But I grew up in the Midwest in Illinois in a middle class Christian family. I was definitely unconditionally loved by my parents and had a great older sister, and I even went to Catholic school for part of my upbringing. And still, even with what looks like a really normal experience, I was 6 when I was first sexually assaulted. Then I was 13 when I was exposed to pornography for the first time, which is actually the average age of pornography exposure. And some experts say that that age is dropping also now. I was 13 when I was convinced to remove my clothes on camera for an adult stranger online, using my home Wi-Fi, using the laptop my parents had bought for me. I was 16 when I planned to travel from Philadelphia to New York City with the intention to meet a man who had been grooming me online. Thank God my mom stepped in on that one. And I was 17 when I was sexually assaulted again. I was 19 when I met a man on a dating app that was 15 years older than me that would become my main abuser and my main trafficker. And really, between the ages of 19 and 22, this man did his best to blur my boundaries, tried to take my dignity, really separated me from my friends and family and anyone that would have seen some of the red flags in my behavior changes. And he really did his best to silence my voice. And I think all of this comes from this place of being a preteen and a teenager online. That was an escape for me from my parents' divorce, the challenges of being a teenager, trying to figure out what girl friendships look like in middle school and high school, and my struggles with identity and self-confidence, which I think many parents, you'll see that in your kids, or maybe you can relate to your own upbringing. And I really thought that my online experience could be separate from my real life. And I think that's the thing that, looking back now and kids today don't understand that you're not safe online. There's not this inherent safety online. And I wasn't logging online and hanging a sign in the door that said I was open for business, but essentially that's what was happening. I was logging onto websites and apps that had no protective factors to keep me safe online from predators that have specific strategies that they use to try to groom and exploit individuals. And so this inherent safety that I thought I had was actually used against me. And in my personal experience, this really dangerous online activity and exploitation, unfortunately, then escalated into dangerous in-person activity and exploitation too. And despite my exploitation starting online, it didn't stay there. And that's what I want kids to know is that you might think that your online life is separate from your in-person life because you might choose to use a different name or choose to not give them your last name, or lie about who you are, your identity. But the second that a trafficker or a predator online has a little piece of the reality, they're experts at figuring out more about you, identifying your vulnerabilities, and then pretending to meet that need. And so, besides just these men grooming me online, our society was grooming me too. And I was consuming online content on social media that was targeted at me, that validated and rewarded that kind of hypersexual behavior that my predators were kind of coercing me into. And that also desensitized me to participating in sexual conduct later on the line. And so I'm grateful that my story didn't end in exploitation, thank God. And many others, they do end in exploitation. And I think we have a really important part to play as people who are parents, guardians, caregivers, people that just care for the youth and young adults in our society. That while this is a really scary, overwhelming topic, it's not one that we can just push under the rug or hide or download one safety app and think that you've got it covered. Or like Kevin said, look at that dirty dozen list and think that as long as you don't have those apps on your phone, you're covered. Because while my story is unique and I'm unique, the themes of the story throughout my experience that I shared, it's not unique, right? I work now directly with survivors of exploitation and trafficking and those at risk with an organization called One More Child. And truly, I hear daily the experiences of youth and young adults um, that are targeted and groomed and exploited online. And really, too many honored that you're all here taking this topic really seriously. And I hope that as Kevin, Matt, and I share some tools of how you can keep your kids safe online, that you take this really seriously. Because as a survivor, as someone whose parents did their best, there's always more that we can do. There's more education. Technology is changing, and we have to stay educated on how to protect youth from having to endure the lifelong, really hard trauma that comes after exploitation.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And thank you for being so brave and sharing your story and your vulnerabilities. Really appreciate that. With that, I'll hand it over to Matt.
There we go. Sorry, old laptop. I wanted to say thank you to Olivia first. I just have one thing I disagree on you with, Olivia. You're not ordinary, you're extraordinary, and you're amazing, and we're all privileged to have you on the call tonight sharing your lived experience because um as my friend and colleague and Kevin here said, the only expert on this call is you. Actually, I disdain the word subject matter expert. There are no experts. We're all students. I have to update my bio. Subject matter resource, I am comfortable with, but there's no experts. We're all students. Everything Kevin and I know, by the way, Olivia, is from survivors, brave survivors like yourself, and what we've observed and learned from the predators and traffickers. But Kevin and I don't have the lived experience, so we need you. And thank you very kindly, very brave. Um, really appreciate you. If I'm going to add anything new to this, I think it's a little bit of both of what Kevin and Olivia added here, where we look at, yeah, I'm going to go to Kevin, and we have their dozen list, and we have apps that get all sorts of like negative press and stuff. So if I can start with that point, to me, that's definitely like knowledge we want to have as parents. I'm a parent. By the way, I'm a parent. I do investigate some pretty heinous activities and things like that. But the reason I'm in this mission and I'm here today is I'm the loving, doting father of two little boys. That's why I was a few minutes late getting on, Christine. I appreciate your patience. And they come first. But when I look at this, yeah, there are like technologies that, like parents ask me this. It started a lot in COVID. So it's like, which apps, which games do I blacklist? And I'm like, well, first and foremost, anywhere where there's going to be young people, you're going to find predators. So I'm an 80s kid. So back when I was a kid, shopping malls, school playgrounds, parking lots, malls, arcades are all places that kids would go to, and ergo there would be traffickers. At the time we didn't have that word, or there would be predators. But we didn't need a separate safety plan for every single app today, nor did we one for the arcade, the playground, the mall. When I was a kid, it was like, don't ever leave the mall if we drop you off without checking first at home. They used to give me change for these things called pay phones. If Kevin knows what those are, I don't think Olivia and Christine do, but remember we had phone books and pay phones. And if you call and you don't get an answer, you don't leave. And that worked across the board. So, I mean, the way I like to look at this is how can we harden the target or make the kids harder to groom and manipulate and lure away from places of relative safety? So my approach on it is, for parents out there, if you're tuning in, you're overwhelmed with the apps and stuff. Believe me, I am too. So this is like my job. And I cannot keep up with the games and the social media platforms that are ever shifting and evolving and emerging. So how can we win? Well, I established a rule. You can have three. Can't have four, you can have three. And if you want to get a fourth one, you have to get rid of one of the other ones, because I can't keep up with 30 of these things, but I can do three of them. And then how do I know I want my kid to be on this thing? I call it a good old-fashioned coffee break Google. Parents, if you're on with me and you're working from home through COVID, you had kids that were bored and needing social stimulation, I'm with you. So I called coffee break Google. I would have a cup of coffee, I'd go outside or step away, and I would Google the app. And I'd look at keywords, like really sensible ones, like name of app. I'm not going to pinpoint any of them, but name of app, safety, predators, or trust and safety, abuse reporting, and name of app. And if I thought that the app did not have sufficient trust and safety mechanisms, which means content moderation, mechanisms for reporting abuse and harassment or predatory behavior, that kind of thing, then I just say X, nay, no. If I felt that it was reasonably good, my next step as a loving, doting parent, and again, it's weird, I'm not a tech expert, I'm more of an investigative guy. But I could Google and go, how do I install? How do I set it up? How do I establish privacy settings? And then I would use that as a conversation starter with my kids. I go, okay, I'm going to allow you this app or this gaming platform, but we together are going to install it on our devices. Then we're going to add each other as friends on it and connect. And then we're going to set the privacy settings. And then we're going to establish the rules of engagement. Period, full stop. And that's it. And, the message I really want to give, I'm in a small town in Ontario, Canada. I'm not in Silicon Valley, and I'm not any better at that than you. I'm not a tech person, but I'm good at human behavior, and you are too. You know more than you give yourselves credit for. You know what grooming looks like in creepy behavior, as Olivia so astutely mentioned, and Kevin too. If you know the warning signs of grooming and luring tactics, and you can convey them to the kids and establish your home as a place of safety, open and trusted communication, no sneaking around, no judgment. If you come to me, we're not taking your tech away. We're not going to blame you. We love you forever and always, no matter what. and we will help you fix it. If we can't fix it on our own, we'll help you get the people involved that can. And your kids can come to you. And guess what? This issue that we're looking at, yeah, it might be sort of centered to an extent in like Silicon Valley, where we're looking at tech giants and social media, and they definitely have accountability there and their role to play. But in my humble opinion, the battle is fought and won at the dinner table, at the drives to hockey or soccer or baseball practices, when you read storybooks at the end of the night and you have that 15 minutes just to talk to your kids about their day. I personally believe that this is where this battle's fought and won. And when we will, provided we have faith in ourselves, faith above, and we establish those types of communication channels and trust with our kids. Because again, sorry, Olivia, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but this does not look overtly like dangerous. It's subtle cues, and the kids and us will get, what do you call them, vibes, butterflies. Not quite right. You message too much, you say too many nice things, you're accelerating a relationship at an unnatural rate, which does happen online a lot. Anyone who's done online dating will tell you the same thing. It's called gaslighting. It's called love bombing. If we have that open communication with these kids and we instill in them the values that they can recognize, even if they can't confirm it, but trust their vibes, and they know they can come to you, it doesn't as much matter which particular app they're on, because that will change in time if we harden those targets. Sorry, that was a long answer, but it is a great question, to be fair, Christine. Oh, you're on mute, Christine.
Thank you so much, Matt. And I most definitely know what payphones are. So I didn't have my first cell phone until my daughter was born, my second child. So I am not the most tech savvy person. I'll be one of the first ones to admit it. But I think you gave some great advice, and I do. Like, I have some of the worst apps for kids. Like, my daughter plays Roblox, right? And my son plays Fortnite, and she is just turned 14, so she now does have Snapchat, and she's starting to want to get social media. But I go on there, and when it was time to download the TikTok, it was like the 13-year-old version of TikTok. Like, I went and try to put every single control on there that I can. And I think it's not so much about, like you and Kevin had mentioned, barring your kids from all these games and apps, but having the conversations with them and putting the parental controls on there. And if you're not tech savvy like myself, you can Google that, and there's YouTube videos and so forth. So I will also share, and I do have a question for you all. How are predators breaching our privacy to target our kids? How are they gaining access to our kids? Um, and what are some of the clues that our kids are giving them unknowingly? And I'll just share another brief story. I'm just gonna throw my kids out there. They may not appreciate this, but like, for example, I was asking you talk about the dinner table. I was asking my son, what do you want for dinner tonight? Well, I want pizza. Okay, well, we're not having pizza tonight. Well, what if I can get someone to deliver my pizza for free? I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, some guy online just offered to deliver me this pizza for me for free, and he has my address, right? He didn't give out his address. You know, they're they they can look up stuff through your IP address, through different things. And Kevin, you can probably share more about this with all the work that you do.
Yeah, and I know Matt can, and actually Larry, and we got a whole army of people, really good people that have a very substantial skill set in this area. Now you're asking about how do predators target, and that's a very good question. Now, if we think about, one of my jobs is to simplify things, but not too much. But so where are kids exposed? I like that Matt mentioned what would this have looked like 20 years ago? I mean, you're looking at family get-togethers. You're looking at the uncle that comes over that makes the kids uncomfortable. You're looking at the coach who may want to spend some one-on-one time with your kid, or the youth pastor, or on and on. It's back then. It's who's trying to get your kid isolated and why, and that's still a question now. So we have physical security and digital security, and where is that exposure? Well, I've actually, so my girls grew up. I had them by myself since they were I think 4 and 7. Their mom died early. I had them by myself when I was working counterterrorism and federal law enforcement. I was out of the country a lot. So they've grown up around military and law enforcement, but I was always very open with them. We had open conversations. My goal was to build trust. Of course, they're growing up with a dad, not a mom. Their hair looked like I did it. It was one of those things. I was one of those creepy guys holding all the pink fluffy toys, standing by the girls' bathroom, waiting on my daughters to get out. And I actually got approached by law enforcement more than once, which I had no problem with. That was great. But where are our kids exposed? And we're talking about the online digital space. And as Matt said, where are you going to hunt? And if we take a step back from that, and if you think about where are you going to hunt? And if your experience is anything like mine, when your kids hit 5th grade, you no longer really knew how to do math. You just didn't. I remember my kids coming home all upset because, I mean, we worked on homework. They got a bad grade on math. And I said, no, they're all right. I checked everything. We did everything. She said, yeah, but it's not the right way. So anyway, where did everybody go? Online homework help. And I cannot tell you, and what we used to do is when we would work these cases, we'd go back and look to see where these predators were online. What was their footprint? They were all over homework help sites. And what did COVID do? Probably increased drastically their migration into these homework help sites. And if you're a parent looking at your kid online, it's like, oh, this is a homework site. And then it's you're reading through. It's like, oh, this guy's pretty good. So my kids actually learned how to do this from this person. But you don't notice where the person then, after they build that rapport, they're saying, hey, let's go over to Snapchat, or let's go over to this app, or let's go over to something private. That seems like a very simple thing, but just identifying when somebody and educating your child on when somebody tries to move you off of a public space where everybody can see what you're talking about onto something private. And that's something we see over and over and over again. Another vulnerability that I really think, because I've seen sextortion, I've seen stalkers, I've had women sit in front of me as a prosecutor and they say, I don't know how this guy knows where I'm at. So I'm looking at her, I'm doing my thing, and it's like, hey, is this your email? Is that your password? She said, yeah. How'd you know that? I said, because you're reusing passwords. You've been involved in data breaches. And I'll bet this guy is probably logging into your iTunes or logging into your Google account and reading your stuff and looking to see where you're at. So password hygiene. I mean, that sounds very, very simple. But how many people listening to this use a password manager? How many people reuse your passwords? We had a group a few years ago that actually did this on law enforcement, logged in and had law enforcement's email. Then they became law enforcement and they were contacting. I won't get into that, but anyway, this happens to adults as well as other people. And I know Matt can probably go into this much more deeply, but just think about if this is 20 years ago, where is your child exposed? Who has isolated uh, contact with your child where nobody's watching? Where does the coach want individual time alone with them? Why? Does a priest, preacher, whatever, are they trying to get your child alone for some counseling? Why? I mean that's red flags. Same with online. And they are online everywhere, schools, libraries, and also watch for secondary phones. I learned this very early on from my daughters that if you're putting spyware on a kid's phone and you're taking it and looking through it, that may be a good thing up until they get to around 13, 14. If you're still grabbing your kid's phone when they're 15, 16, 17, there, there's a serious lack of trust, and you're probably going to have secondary devices that are hidden throughout. And one last thing, but if you if you have kids over and you happen to go out and you find a cell phone that's in your mailbox or somewhere hidden in your house, it's probably not an accident. They've probably taken their real device with their real accounts. That's the phone that their parents are monitoring. So trust, dinner table, Matt said, dinner table trust is a major thing. If you want to really inoculate your kids and keep them safe, you've got to figure out how to build trust, how to build those relationships, and not always just focus on that device. Focus on that real relationship. And I'll stop rambling for there. You're muted again.
Just gonna have to stay. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Matt?
Well, I love it. Actually, to further Kevin's point right there, we remember as parents, or I always say caring adults, so we could be guardians, parents, teachers, service providers in the community. We do not parent or safeguard devices. We do parent and love children and teens. So focus on them, not the devices in these platforms. I think that's sage advice, Kevin. I appreciate that. Um, further to your point, I have done, as Kevin's done, work on a variety of different exploitation case files and like, including stalking. And I'm going to lay a little bit of truth on you out there, loving, caring adults. Often enough, it's not even our teenagers anymore. It's us. The one of the weakest links is a proud parent. We overshare more than the kids do. I teach in a college and I teach with high school age students, and they're actually pretty. 10 years ago, they were wide open, but like no privacy, and they shared everything. But some of the more recent ones I've seen have been what parents would share, and you can see like addresses in the background, license plates. I'll tell you a story. When I started teaching internet safety, um, in the very beginning, when I started doing this in early 2015, I used a picture from my house with my lawn tractor in it. I had a big oak tree. One of the kids puts his hand up. He goes, "You're my neighbor." I go, "What?" Well, I live over across the road and I recognize that tree. So it wasn't just my house number, it's landmarks. Like, another friend of mine, they had a restored 57 Ford Fairlane, which everyone knew in the area. So when that got posted, it was reverse image searchable, and people were able to find, because there was only like 7 of those cars in North America or something like that. I forget like the specifics. So it's the other thing. It's like being careful what's in the background and what are you disclosing. We know about mail, maybe in license plates and address numbers, but I know I was involved in a case where we found an offender. You know how they spray paint the sidewalks and put numbers like 16, 17? We were able to find them through that. So we have to be very careful what's on those backgrounds, what we're disclosing. But the other thing, you know how we achieve things and we want to share them in real time. So, hey everyone, this is an example I use in the schools when I teach youngsters and parents. Actually, going for a jog tonight. It's a lovely evening on the Bayshore like trip. Well, when I talk to the students about that, I'm like, hey, you're telling everybody, well, 4 billion internet users, that you're going to be jogging on this beautiful but dark trail with very little lighting and no one around to help you. What could possibly go wrong? Like, would you go to the mall, like your local mall, into the food court and say, hey, everyone, in an hour, I'm going to be alone on the bike trail on a jog. Um, just letting you know, I'm going to be out there alone. No one can help me if anything goes wrong. And they laugh and go, no, that. And I go, why? Well, it's weird. And I go, yeah, what else? Is it dangerous? Yeah. So you wouldn't say it in front of 200 people, but you're saying it in front of 4 billion. You don't think the math is tilting against you on this. And they go, okay, I understand. So I just say to them is, maybe don't broadcast where you are or where you're going to be, but maybe you can say, I past tense, I had a great night on a jog. I had a great workout. I had a wonderful evening at this particular event. Past, like, I hope I get that terminology right. Past tense meaning I've already done this. Finally, the only other thing, beyond parents oversharing is one thing I've noticed is the dating profiles. So, I only like a year ago was single after 20 years of a marriage. But I found it really astounding that so many parents, men and women, males and females, overshared on those dating apps about their families. And I do know that there are bad people out there that will look for women, men, that have children, so that, like, they're not really trying to get to me, but they're trying to get to my kids, but go through me to get to them. And to Kevin's point, like, are they trying to spend too much time with them or get access to them that's unsupervised and stuff? I think it's a combination of vulnerability and naivete. And the saying I was taught was the road to hell is paved in naivete and good intentions. So, being aware, I think, if we're out there and one of the riskiest times, in my opinion, and Kevin probably has an opinion, and Olivia might, is any time that we are repartnering and we have children in our lives. We have to be, I mean, we all deserve love and romance. So I'm super in favor of that. But I feel like we have to be cautious about who we allow into that particular circle, more than at probably any other point. And I'll pause there too. I'm going to ramble. I don't want to ramble either.
You're muted again.
I don't typically mute myself. I'm just trying to make sure there's a storm, there's no background noise. So, Olivia, please, is there anything that you would like to share?
I mean, I think Kevin and Matt really covered it. I think we also, as caring adults, like Matt said, I think we also have to remember that we can put all of these safety guards in place, right? We can really do our best, but we also have to be prepared, that we know teenagers are going to push boundaries. That it's just natural. I was a pretty good kid and I pushed every possible boundary just in like the sneakiest, nicest way. And so, what are you going to do when you recognize that your kid did send a nude picture or did receive a DM and replied to it with personal information? And so, we also have to be prepared before those things happen, because you're going to say, not my kid. My kid would never. Their friends would never. They're in a good friend group. My parents and all of my friends' parents would have said the same thing, not Olivia, right? And so I'm giving you really, and you can tell your kids that this woman online named Olivia gave you permission to go through their phones and to have conversations about, like Matt and Kevin said, if there is something that we need to talk about, I'm not going to be upset with you. I'm not going to remove all of your devices. It's creating that emergency exit plan before you need to jump off the plane, right? We've got to prepare them for what are they supposed to do when they get a nude photo, or what are they supposed to do when they did meet up with someone in person and now it's really serious. And so creating that emergency exit plan, making sure they have at least one trusted adult, and if that's not you, that's also okay, right? And communicating that too. Mom and dad might not be the trusted adult, and it's not personal, but it's more important for you to help your kid identify someone safe. And we can get our feelings hurt privately, but as long as our kids have someone safe, that's really what matters.
Thank you. All such great advice. And I'll just add on to that. I did mention like this was before, I didn't have access to cell phones and so forth, but, I didn't always make the best choices either, and I heard once that the only difference between a human trafficking victim and everyone else is sometimes just luck. I always said I had amazing guardian angels. But I will share too that opening up those lines of communication and having your kids understand that they're not going to be punished is key. And there's some great resources out there on how to have these conversations with your children. So if you are not sure how to broach those conversations, there's websites like 821.org, Shared Hope International, our organization, Alliance to End Human Trafficking.org has some parent resources as well. But I was literally when I was working on our parents' presentation, I was looking actually at 821. I'm still learning and educating myself also. And they had a parent conversation guide. And so I was literally sitting there with my computer reading word for word with my son, like while he was gaming. And he's like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me." And I was like, "Wait, what?" Like that, I wasn't expecting that. But if we're not having these conversations with our kids, let me tell you, these things are happening. And if we're not having these conversations with our kids, it's, you know, there, if we say that this is not happening with my kids, we're not having conversations with them, right? So he didn't want to tell me the app. It was Snapchat, which I know is one of the worst. But he didn't want to tell me. He's like, "You're going to take it away from me." And so I had a promise, "I'm not going to take away your app, but tell me what happened." Right. And he got, you know, said someone sent us nude pic. It's like those, like almost chat bots where they just send out pictures and see who responds. Um, but so we have about 15 minutes left, and I do want to, I have additional questions, but I do want to give our audience questions, time to ask questions as well. And I know we got a couple here in the Q&A. So if you have any questions, now is the time that you can put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. One is from Marilyn. She said the oversight of apps is one process. But given the access kids have at schools, kids do work around and have access to tools and platforms that the parents have no control over. So, what can be done legislatively? The schools aren't even aware of what to do online.
Yeah,
Anyone
and
would like to speak on that? Yes, go ahead.
I, I just want to throw out that, you know, we're looking at them or they or somebody else that's going to step in and save us. And you know, I've said this before in articles that I put out that nobody's coming to save us. By the time law enforcement or somebody becomes aware of something, it's already too late. Especially when you get to sexual assaults and things of that nature. I mean, I just spent a week over in the UK with Project Vigilant, brilliant, uh, uh, proactive policing, and I was just amazed at what I saw and what they were doing there. But if we take the same over here, what are we doing legislatively? So I've been involved in legislative discussions for many, many, many years. And as I look back, and I think I had this conversation with Matt earlier, you know, as I look back, this is great. We think, oh, this is going to be great. We passed a law. This is going to fix things. But the bad guys, they adapt. We're always behind. So nobody's coming to save us. It's up to us. And I really don't like saying it's up to us because there's that bystander effect of, you know, maybe somebody, maybe a teacher or maybe another family member will do something. No, it's up to me. I've got kids. I've got nephews, nieces. I've got kids in my life. It's up to me. I have to take action. I have to do something. And going back to this, I have read hundreds of thousands of pages of predators talking to kids online, hundreds of thousands of them as a prosecutor. I focused on technology and I focused on kids. So here I go. I have read through these. You know, they do one thing most parents don't, and that is listen. You know, as you said, you are having conversations with your son. That's golden. I don't care if they have Snapchat. They're going to get it at some point. Right now is when you build that foundation, you build that trust, you build that relationship, you inoculate them against the world because somebody's going to come after them and you're not always going to be there. The lawmakers are not going to save him. The police are not going to save him. The prosecutors are not. Tech professionals are not. They're very vulnerable. And it's that relationship with parents that I really want to emphasize.
Thank you. And Olivia, you mentioned, you know, the pictures and so forth, and once they're out there, they're out there. Could anyone talk about the new Take It Down legislation that was recently passed and how that's going to help kids and victims of these crimes?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about it, and I'm no expert. I'm just somebody that I definitely think that the we the people is us, right? It's the me that I'm the one that's going to step in, and it's the we of we are the we the people that get to say what legislation gets passed. And so if you're not actively engaged in legislation, I would encourage you to do so. Your senators, we're the ones hiring them. They got to listen to us, even if it doesn't feel like they are sometimes. But a recent piece of legislation that's passed that has gotten some really good bipartisan support, because this issue is a bipartisan issue, right? It impacts everybody. Um, we're kind of putting the onus back on tech, that if there is technology that's explicit that gets shared on tech platforms, that technology can't just say, well, it was a third party that posted it, I have nothing to do with it, and still gain all of the income from all the ads that were posted alongside the explicit content that was shared, the explicit content that was shared of minors, so the child sexual abuse material that was shared. And so it's really demanding that technology platforms can't just say, sorry, I'm just a hosting platform, but instead we hold them accountable. We give them a deadline of when they need to remove explicit content that's shared on their sites. And we also have hefty fines that they have to pay if they don't remove that content in time. Matt or Kevin, do either of you want to add more details about that important legislation that passed?
No, I think you did great. It's I may be a bit cynical at this point in my career after 30 plus years working in this field, that I really think we put, we've had some great legislation that has passed, but the legislation itself can be great, but and it's the execution and then the after effects. What are we really going to see? I think that's another thing. And had some great conversations again in the UK. They have different laws, different ways of doing things, and we're having some very, very, very good conversations over this. But no, I think you covered that very well, Matt. I don't know if you have anything. I know you've been keeping up, haven't you?
I think the pair of you both, Olivia and Kevin, covered off very well. The only thing I'd add is I am appreciative and a fan of the legislation and legislative efforts, the regulatory pieces that are moving. Um, I do tend to still fall back, and it might be my small town Canadian way. It comes down to my dinner table, and the only ones protecting mine are me, and they protect me. I don't rely on anyone outside of that. It is comforting, I feel, to know that the winds of change are blowing in the right direction, but I still take full and responsibility to safeguard my beloved children. I definitely feel like there is a place for the regulatory, and I really believe that the social media companies and the gaming platform companies can and should be doing more of their share. But ultimately, I go back to my dinner table every single time.
So let's talk about that dinner table, because we have a comment here, and I know Olivia and Kevin and I talked about this a little bit. So we have a comment from Kara who said the tough thing I found out was that when I restricted games and apps for my girls and the phones themselves, my younger daughter was one step ahead of me and simply got hold of another phone. So easy for kids to find another phone or get hold of a device that we as parents or caretakers may never know anything about. So we had talked about this a little bit earlier, but sometimes we do have those conversations with our kids and they just don't always listen. So, is there any advice for parents on how to handle those tough situations, or how we can empower our children to know how to recognize or respond to some of these unsafe situations?
Olivia, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of my thoughts. Thanks. I think I think that perfectly nails the point that we can't just lean back on, you download an app that's supposed to protect your kids, and that's all it is, because exactly that, they might find another phone. They go to school with different devices. VPNs are now the big thing to get around all kinds of things. And so I think if you can avoid being the only person that is having these conversations with your kids, that's really helpful. And if they're only hearing this from mom and dad, or I know I'm like the weird aunt that has these conversations with my nieces and nephews, if they're only ever hearing it from one person, it's not going to land. They need to hear it from somebody that they think is cool, that they believe in, that is in a career that they think would be really awesome. If it's a celebrity that's talking about this, and we just need it from different angles. And so I know, regardless of where you are, if you need help finding an agency that has people that can kind of connect with your kid and talk to them about it, it's finding something, and I like to think I'm still pretty cool and not super scary, having these conversations with your kids and not being the only one. Part of it, their brain is working against them, right? There's that part of their brain that's just not yet developed. And sometimes their brains are making decisions that we know once they're developed, they would make different decisions. But it's building that community around them where it's not just you having these conversations, I think is important. And I recognize that that can be hard to do.
You know, I recognize that my kids are going to drive vehicles. We're in the US. They're going to be driving at some point. Now, looking at technology, I kind of think of it the same way. When I started teaching them to drive, we'd start off in a parking lot somewhere, very remote, wide open area, very slow, start maneuvering, make sure they're comfortable. And then we would go to a side street and with no traffic, a very safe place. When they got comfortable with that, we'd take a step up. You guys get the idea. You all drive. So the way I approach technology was the same way that I approach driving, because I know my kids are going to be on technology, or they're going to use technology, probably going to use technology as soon as they walk in the door, first grade or kindergarten or whatever it is. There's technology there. There's technology at home. They're surrounded by technology. There are so many devices out here in everybody's home. It's so easy to get a secondary device, and you don't have to have cell service with it. You just got to go somewhere with an open internet connection. That Yeah, and being very open with my girls. And I got to say, they knew exactly what I did. They grew up around cops, they grew up around military. And every time one of their friends got I'll just say it, a dick pic or something like that, they were scrolling to get the username and this, they knew what I needed. They would take a picture, and I got every single one of those pictures that their friends got. And they say, Dad, look at that guy. He sent that picture to my friend. And, that was the kind of relationship I had with my girls. Very open, age appropriate. We had age appropriate sex talk. I talked to the pediatrician. I said, hey, if my girls come to you and say they need to be on birth control or sex stuff, you have my full permission to have conversations with them and do whatever needs to be done, because I know I came up in an abstinence only community and that didn't work for me. So anyway, when we look at this, technology is going to be a part of their life. And you have people that just say, oh, I'm not letting my kids on this app. I'm not letting them on that. I get there. If they have a device, I get it all the time. I know everything that's on there. I'm looking through it. That's really not, that's only going to work when they're smaller. I have consistently seen every time these kids hit 13, 14 or so, if you're still doing that, they've got another device somewhere. You're looking at the device they want you to see. Another thing, my daughter took a screenshot or a video. One of her friends had spyware on her phone that her parents put there. She reversed it because she knew the password. They don't have password hygiene. She knew the password, logged in, and all the kids were standing around giggling because they were looking at where her mom was on there. These tactics do not build trust. They do not build relationships. They build distrust. They don't trust you anymore because you're spying on them. They are not able to really build those relationships outside of that. So anyway, rambling again here, but if you don't build that foundation of trust, if you don't actually listen to your kids and have conversations, the predators will. I did notice in those hundreds of thousands of pages, they listened and they responded appropriately and they asked deeper questions. They built that bond and that illusion of trust that the parents were not, because parents were trying so hard to protect their kids. And I'll pass.
Yeah. Thank you. And I know we're right about a time. We have two questions that I want to get to real quick. Matt, if you could address this real quick, what is the average age that you recommend allowing social media, and how do we stop social media and social devices?
Oh, wow. Um, that's a question.
I'm sorry, on school devices. I'm not sure if I said that right.
Okay, well, part one, what age? Legally, you're not supposed to allow them on before the age of 13 as per the user agreement. So I'm going to say let's adhere to that at minimum. Beyond that, it's really, to me, up to the maturity and the psychology of the child. Social media can be a really brutal, cold, and unforgiving space, and some kids are more sensitive than others or more vulnerable than others. some have life circumstances that make them conducive to the grooming and luring tactics that my friends Kevin and Olivia mentioned earlier. Simply as a divorce, and their Instagram account shows pictures of them with their sisters, brothers, their mom, but there's no dad. A predator will become or attempt or try to become the father figure and fill those voids. So I'm going to say that is really legitimately up to each and every parent carrying adult. I think provided they're 13 or above, as per the user agreements. I think the last time I looked, they were 13. Some countries are changing that to 16. So I'd at least at minimum follow that. Beyond that, it is up to your discretion as a parent. I can't prescribe an age. Some 12-year-olds are actually old souls and they're really 20. And then, some 20-year-olds are actually like, arrested development and they're like 11, especially males. I could say that because I am one. I'm sorry. The second part of your question though?
Yeah, so yeah, I think we have to move on. So because we're right at time, but let's end on this note. If each of you could just take like 30 seconds and give one piece of advice to teens to help them stay safe online, what would that be?
I can lead and then hand it off. Again, I'm going to pair it a little bit of really good advice. I haven't been on a panel in a long time, but I've heard so much good stuff come. But teenagers and young folks, actually anybody, I think it's a fallacy to say this is kids and teenagers. I'm going to say even people, I'm 46 years young. How about we all follow sage advice here? Beware of what's too good to be true. If we suspect that something's not quite right, seek counsel or advice from our family and friends, trusted people. Is this too good to be true? Is this love forming too fast? Is this gaslighting or love bombing? Is this a grooming tactic? If you're 46 or you're 16 or you're 6, I think we want to trust our judgment and our instincts and seek advice if we feel something is not quite right. And I do feel we would all benefit from de-emphasizing the apps versus the behaviors which transcend. What's true on TikTok's true on Roblox. It's also true on Fortnite. It's true on Instagram. If we start looking at the behaviors and trust our instincts to say something's not quite right, how about I seek advice and support from a trusted person? If I'm a child or a teen, I would suggest, as I believe it was Olivia, it might not be dear old mom and dad, because I know I'm telling everybody on the call, hand up if you've ever made a mistake in your life before there's social media and you're glad there's not a permanent record of it. And we've all made mistakes we want to talk to dear old mom and dad or grandma about. But if we have, as Olivia suggested, trusted people, if we're children or teens, older that we can trust, I think that's great. And even people my age, trust our judgment, seek some good advice. And I think we should all practice, like Kevin mentioned, password hygiene and what's in our background of our pictures, and just I think it's actually just common sense. You wouldn't want a stranger in a random mall to see a picture of your bedroom. So why do we put it online? So that's one thing I'll say. If we wouldn't say it or do it offline, like at the food court at the mall, let's not do it online. And we fix a lot of the problems that way. So I think common
Thank you.
sense and get some support where it need be. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Kevin, real quick, one piece of advice
Yeah, if you have parents in
to
your life,
teens.
they aren't as stupid as you think. You need to trust them. They're going to screw up. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to say stupid things, but they're there because they love you and they want you to do your best. For those of you without parents in your life, find a mentor, and it can be tricky. Find somebody you trust. Find somebody who will be there to mentor you and to guide you and to give you advice. I think mentors are uh, a key part of growing up and really shortcutting things.
Thank you. And Olivia, do you want us to wrap us up?
So Okay, I have two, but I'm gonna go really quick. One is be courageous. So when you're feeling like something is wrong, be courageous. When you're feeling like your friends are trying to make it cool to send explicit photos, be courageous. Don't do it, right? I think pick the courageous thing. And my second is choose to do the next best right thing. You're never in too far deep. You can always just do the next best right thing.
Thank you so much, Olivia. And because Olivia mentioned pornography as well, I put in the chat a book, a resource, Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. It's a great resource. They have one junior for little kids in elementary school that you could read with them. And there's also one that's more geared, I would say, towards middle school type kids. Great way to bring about awareness of pornography and have those conversations with your kids. Um, you know, it's not, you could ask how many conversations do you have with your kids? And I heard once that you have one conversation, but that conversation never ends. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you all for our audience, for attending tonight and learning more about this issue. Really appreciate the expertise of all of our panelists. And we got a lot of thumbs up and hearts and applause going on right now. So really appreciate this. For those who'd like to share this panel discussion with other parents or educators or anyone or even your teens. This will be recorded. We will be sending out a copy of this recording that you can share. It also will be posted on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't checked out our youth videos, we just had a high school youth video contest that talks about that the kids did about some of these very things that we talked about. Check them out. Our first place winner was on catfishing. So check it out. And that's the Alliance to End Human Trafficking. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Have a safe and lovely evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.